Is there anything that people should be doing to really future-proof their careers?
I am trying to future-proof my career and my business myself. I asked ChatGPT how to future-proof my career and recruitment now. But
As ChatGPT, that's pretty
ask
much the go-to
ChatGPT.
thing these days.
That's what I would suggest, yeah. And it'll give you great advice because it did the same for me.
Life today is chaotic, unpredictable, and constantly shifting. But within the chaos lies opportunity, and we're here to seize it. This is Generation Uncharted.
Dean Connelly, thank you so much for joining me on Generation Uncharted. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. It's good to be here.
So we grew up being told to chase the dream job, right? But the world has changed so much now. I mean, even if you get the dream job, it still might not pay enough to afford your rent. Hours along, we're probably all going to be replaced by AI. So the big question I really wanted to kick off with is, is the dream job still a thing, and is it still achievable?
Look, it's a very good question. I think, unfortunately, for the majority of us, the idea of a dream job where you're going to work every day feeling fulfilled and it's all fun and games doesn't really exist. And I think what people need to remember, especially if they're getting into a creative career like PR, they see the glitz and the glamour of some incredible campaigns and lots of creativity, but actually there's a lot of work that goes behind that in terms of budgeting and project management and stakeholder management. So I think sometimes people build this idea of a career, whatever industry that is, thinking that it's all just the fun creative output or the idea of what they had, and they forget that there's a lot of into it which they might classify as boring. So I think the dream career or dream role can exist as long as you're realistic that it's not just all going to be the fun parts of what you think it is.
Yeah. Talk to me a little bit about a recruiter then and how a recruiter's job has changed. So I got to say, I didn't know what a recruiter was for the longest time. I think I was like one or two jobs into my industry before I
Yeah.
even knew what a recruiter was and before I got a first job for a recruiter. So how has that changed? And I know this sounds a weird question, but who's got the power at the moment? Is it the employees because we have good employment law in the UK, or is it the employers because the job market is trickier than ever? Like, how has your job changed, and how has that negotiating between the different parties changed?
Yeah, it's two good questions. So I think a lot of people understand the premise of recruitment, but they don't understand what someone like Latte or a recruitment consultancy does. And sometimes I think people go, well, do I have to pay Latte a fee? They've done a lot of work on my behalf, interviewing me, profiling me, scheduling interviews. But no, essentially what happens is we have clients like Milk and Honey, Hope and Glory, etc., who come to Latte to say, we need to find and attract talent for this specific role, and we need XYZ skill sets. And unfortunately, job ads don't really bring all of the talent in. It requires a proactive headhunting approach. If it is a great brand or great agency, sometimes it can attract a lot of irrelevant applicants. So a big part of our role is to assess and screen talent and then make sure that there's a fit. And then in terms of how the role of recruitment has changed, I think it still exists today, the old school recruitment in the big global recruitment agencies and some of the small boutiques where it's very cutthroat sales driven, and it's not really about the client relationship, where it's about getting the CV in as quick as possible. It's not about holding someone's hand through that process and guiding them, educating them on what they're worth, why they're worth that salary, giving insight on, hey, these are the questions that you might be asked. Here are the pros and the cons of the culture. And that in recruitment is shifting because recruiters that still rely on that very hardcore sales model, I do think will eventually be wiped out by AI. When people are coming to a recruitment consultancy, be that a candidate or a client, they're now looking for consultation, and that's what wins the game. So let's say an account manager came to Latte, they might not know what they're wanting, but what they now are starting to expect, maybe subconsciously, is for Latte to give them insight on their salary, why or why not fit for that agency, give them insight to say, okay, if you want to get into that agency, you might need to take a stepping stone role to get there, and really hold their hand through the recruitment process and the advice, not just sending their CV. So that's how recruitment's changed or is changing from this very hardcore sales to proper consultation. But I think it's still got a lot of that old shtick that is there.
Like I can't let you get past saying just one word on AI and that's it. So I am obsessed with AI. So what are the big things that AI are doing to the recruitment industry?
So we haven't seen it yet, but obviously we're a small boutique agency that's very kind of partnership, human first led. It's definitely, I would say, similar to what's happening in the creative industries. It's speeding up things like note taking, taking a job brief. We can record the notes off the back of that and it'll summarize it, and then we'll go in and edit it. It'll help us formulate a headhunt, but then we edit that. So it's speeding up that type of thing. But what AI will eventually do is I think it will wipe out very transactional based recruitment roles. So that might be high volume recruitment for call centers, temp receptionists, anything that's retail staff, baristas, anything that's high volume. AI will automate that, where it will be easier selection. There might be one hiring manager internally, and then AI will filter those CVs. It'll do automated video interview requests. It'll then assess the candidates for those basic skills and then send the CV to the hiring manager. For highly specialized industries, and especially as you move up the career ladder, I don't think it's still going to impact it, but I think AI will be part of the journey. And I'm not sure yet what that looks like. It may be through testing and assessing. The challenge of that is, and if I refer back to PR and social, which is our recruitment specialty, is that AI can't yet listen to a candidate's conversation and layer the questions to really understand if someone can show the how, what, why of the PR strategy. What was the brief? What was the comms challenge? How, what, why did you deliver on that? What were the results? AI can't layer and maneuver those questions to assess talent. It may be able to in the future, but I think there's always going to be that human element on more specialized industries that it won't be able to take over. And the other thing that we do a lot of, we put all of the information in our headhunt message, but candidates still want that 15-minute briefing call. And there's a lot of kind of emotional intelligence, I would say, that will go into the skipping rope of the conversation to be like, I know you didn't like this, but let me highlight this to you. Here are some other concerns, and this balanced to and fro is what guides a candidate to either saying yes on the role because they haven't made the wrong assumptions, or actually pulling out because it's not right. So we do a lot of nuanced conversations. I don't think AI will take over that, but it's at the moment note taking, helping with CRM cleansing, maybe first outreach, and then recruiters are picking up on the briefing calls and the consultation section.
And what has AI done to CVs? So has it improved them? Are people coming to you now? You're like, oh my God, there's less work I need to do here than there ever was before? Or is it actually this doesn't read like you anymore? Like, how have AI really impacted the CV?
Do you know what, Lewis? I haven't, until the last month, I hadn't seen AI creep into the recruitment process at all. But this is the first feedback we've ever had on AI where the client said the candidate came in and gave us an AI generated idea, and they couldn't back it up with their thoughts and insights, etc. And so they rejected the candidate. And then we approached the candidate and said, did you use AI to do this? And they said yes. Now we're starting to build some guidelines and consultations for clients on that, because AI is part of every day now. And it's okay, I think, to use it for that initial formulation. But your job as the PR or the social, as the consultant in the room, is to guide why that idea is right, why it will have brand impact. It's the how, what, why. And if you can't back that up and you haven't added and shaped the idea, then you're not showing your thinking and you're not showing your strategic nous. So for CVs, it hasn't changed anything. For the interview process, it has. And now we've just had our first brief come through from an agency for an AE role, account exec role. And it's a specific AI brief where they've given them a data set and some instructions, and they want them to use AI to analyze the data and pull together a report to see how they use AI to do it. So I think we'll see more and more of that come through. Our salary guide just came out this last week, and it showed that compared with last year, where there was 29% of the industry had AI training, it's jumped to, I think, close to 50% now have had AI training. So it's on the rise. And I'm extending on the question, sorry, Lewis, but
I love that.
I also think AI, everyone's still trying to navigate it. So I haven't spoken to a candidate from one of the big globals where you hear about them investing millions into AI and gone, wow, okay, I need to work at, one of those big networks because they're really powering ahead with AI. I haven't seen it. It feels like everyone's just using it for the basics of quick idea creation, first press release sometimes, etc. And then beyond that, I haven't seen much more.
Yeah, no, it's super interesting because, and I've been hearing this as well, is that actually, whilst everyone's worried about AI replacing, actually, it's going to be about how can you use this tool? It's a tool like anything else. Like, back in the day, it could have been, how good is your video editing skills, whatever it is. Actually, more and more jobs are going to say, it's about how you work with AI rather than how can we replace you with AI. And
Yeah.
interesting that some people fall on that hurdle, as you're saying, is like, well, they just took the idea from AI and that was it. It's like, that's not how you use AI. You can't just use it to generate an idea that that you can use it to improve an idea, but you can't use it to just generate an idea and almost copy and paste it. So that's really interesting, the nuances there.
Yeah, you're spot on. And I think it will, I don't think, look, I am definitely not someone that is deep into the tech world. I'm always behind the eight ball on it. I, at the moment, don't feel it will replace roles. I do think it may at some point reduce the volume of entry-level roles required because you can do a lot more in terms of admin, account coordinator level, speeds a lot of that up. But I think one of the challenges the industry faces, and this isn't just PR, I think it's any industry, is if you don't have a cohort of juniors that are applying their own critical thinking and their own logic to challenges and responses and briefs, and they go through just using ChatGPT, I think it could get to a point where you've got either a lack of account managers because AI has reduced the volume of people coming to the industry, or people getting to account manager level that haven't really had that full, well-rounded experience. And I think that's something for agencies to keep in mind with their training and development.
Yeah. Let's move on a little bit then. As a recruiter, let's get the gossip now. What mistakes do you see that people are still doing, and even at a senior level now? So what mistakes, if you're going for a job, are people falling into?
Yeah. The mistakes actually I find with candidate is less on the candidate side and more on the client side. But I'll start with candidates in terms of some of the things that I see. But it happens less and less because there's so many salary guides, and that is people come in and they really over egg their experience, or they think that they're a higher level than what they are. So some people, for example, let's say it's a senior account manager wanting to step into an AD role. They might say, look, I'm leading an account as an AD. And that could be true whilst there's a gap in the business, but their strategy skill set might not be fully honed yet. So I think try and be realistic about when you're stepping up into that next role, what salary you go in at. Don't try and push for the highest band always, because there's probably a learning curve that you need within that next tier of a role. That's probably some advice I would give. And I think people underestimate the pressure of changing jobs or changing agencies and going into that next tier. So again, if I'm an SAE and I'm changing agencies and going into an AM role, there may be really established SAEs underneath you to you for guidance and approval, and they're going to expect, okay, well, if this person came in and got the job above me, they must be good. I need to see a difference in that. And if you can't show it, it can really cause some challenges both for the individual and for the business as well. A lot of team members will leave when that happens. And so it's got to be the right team structure. I think
I've been on the end. This biggest struggle I've ever had in my career is when I left somewhere to go and take a promotion somewhere else. I actually feel like it's a really hard thing to do. You're almost better off getting the promotion in company and then
Yeah.
moving, because I've really found that was a really hard gig.
Yes, you're right. And even if you are ready, they still see your LinkedIn and say, why did he or she get that?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I think the next thing, and this is probably more for junior levels, but a lot of people do this overall, is they put a professional version of themselves forward instead of their actual authentic personality. And people hire people. So they want to sit in a meeting and go, oh yeah, I really like the vibe of discussing things. I like how your mind works. They don't want to have that professional version where it's hard to connect, because it really is about connection when you're interviewing.
Yeah. The next big thing I wanted to talk to you about really was COVID, because obviously nothing changed the way we work more than COVID, but we're now sort of 5, 6 years on from COVID. I wanted to know what you've seen. How many days in the office is realistic now? Is there more of a move back to hybrid culture? Is there more of a move back to getting people to work 5 days a week in the office? And also, a big benefit that I personally felt with COVID is that, well, now you're not limited to the talent pool of just the people in that local area or in that city. You could be a London agency and you could have people that work in Birmingham and Scotland. You literally can have the best person for the role, not just the best person in the tri-state area. So
Yeah.
how has that impacted things? And is it still, and a lot of people left London and cities because they were like, I don't need to be here anymore. But now that they might have gone into another role that said, well, we want you in 3 days a week, are people having to move back to cities? How has that situation evolved?
It's a really interesting question. I think some people roll their eyes when we reference COVID, but because it was such a profound shift, it is still impacting the world of work. And it's almost like the world of work changed. And there's some businesses that are trying to pull us back to that pre-2020, but it's not happening, despite all of the
Okay.
industry debates. So we see it in the news. There's the big global CEOs of companies even outside of PR, but just in general that we're 5 days back in the office. I think Amazon was one of them. As a PR recruitment specialist, we focus on that industry, and we saw a lot of debate last year of agencies that were trying to move back to a 4 or 5 day in-office week. But our data just came out, and it hasn't shifted. 95% of the industry are still working in the office 3 days or less. Only 1% or 2% are working 5 days per week in the office. And we also ask talent, what is your preference? And a lot of people, or I think some leaders think that team members just don't want to go into the office at all, which is not the case. The most popular is 2 days per week in office. I think it was something like 40% had voted for that. And the next most popular is 3 days per week in the office. It really drops off if you go too high or go too low. And we're recruiting for a role at the moment that's 1 day a week in the office. And we've had a few candidates reject it because like, no, I want and one of the candidates actually is coming from a pure remote agency, and he feels like his growth has been stunted. So it has shifted. There's not a lot of fully remote opportunities out there. There are a handful of businesses that are doing kind of 1 day per week in the office or a few days per month in the office. And so I would say, yes, you need to be probably based in one of the main hubs for certain industries, and PR being one of them. I think it would be difficult to find a pure remote.
What about people that say that they want to they want to live out of London and and I know that we've got some people that do this, that they commute in and they do 1 day a week in the office, or they do sort of they'll come in, do 1 day, maybe stay overnight, and then do the second day. Does that happen a lot, or
It
is that the
does
kind of things that
happen.
you negotiate?
Yeah, you can negotiate it. If you've got a really great CV and the business thinks, well, okay, we definitely need to interview this person, but they only want to come in 1 day a week or, once a fortnight, we do see that sometimes be negotiated. It really depends, I think, on where the business is at in their culture. Some businesses really need the extra body count in the office to add to the culture and the vibe. Maybe there's been a dip in culture and someone joining is all about adding a fresh energy. So it depends on the circumstance, but it's still not common, no.
Interesting. When someone comes to you completely lost in their career, because I think a big thing is that people know what they want to do. I want to get that promotion. I want to get this job title. I want to get this salary. But when someone comes to you completely lost in their career and isn't really sure what they want to do, how do you help them figure it out?
I always encourage them to go for multiple. There are times where I have candidates come through who are in PR, not sure if they want to stay in it. They can't really articulate why they don't want to stay in it. And we'll ask some qualifying questions. Is it like the media relations? Is it the pace? Is it the stress of managing stakeholders? But sometimes they just can't articulate it. And obviously, in those scenarios, we can't put you forward for jobs because a client wants someone that is, I want this job, I want to stay in the industry. But the advice that I typically give is actually go out and apply for multiple jobs across a range of sectors and positions and see what comes back, because you'll start to have some conversations across different industries and roles and maybe really find out what interests you, what doesn't interest you. An interview is not a commitment that you have to see it through to completion. It's you assessing them as much as the business is assessing you. So my advice is to explore and go as far as wide as possible, and or identify, I don't know if I like to say passion points because I think that can be over egged in a career, but find some of the things that you enjoy. Let's say you're moving out of PR or you're moving out of advertising or accounting or whatever. Find the parts that you enjoy and then start to do some research on what types of roles out in the world have a higher focus point on that. That's probably a good starting point.
Talk to me a little bit about money. So, we can dress it up all the ways we want. Of, well, we love our jobs and it's our purpose and whatever. Most people are working because they need the money, and money is going less and less further these days. Especially, I remember when I got my first job working in London, like my proper one, I was on 19K a year, and I can't even imagine how did I eat? But actually, I lived just fine. But obviously, everything's gotten a lot more expensive now.
Yes.
And trying to keep up with that whilst also working in a bit of a dodgy economy for companies that maybe don't have, the massive accounts they used to have or whatever it is. Where is that line at the moment between having that competitive salary? If you and you're saying, oh well, you might need to be in 3 days a week. Well, people need to be in London and they need to have the money to commute. That's a lot more money than if they said, look, we'll go fully remote. We can hire someone in Scotland. They're not going to be as pushy for that big wage because they don't have the big overhead. So how is that all going? And is there a sense, and also talk to me a little bit about senior people, because is there a point where people hit like 35 and they're like, well, if it's not six figures, I'm not doing it, or whatever? Like, how is the money and the economics of the times we live in impacting the demands that you're seeing?
Yeah, I would say we have somewhat a narrow view of that because we are in the PR industry and a lot of our roles are agency side, where it's a very tiered and structured career progression and tiered salaries. So you pretty much know what you're going to get at each level until you get to associate director, where the salary bands can be a lot broader, but it can take longer to move into the next level. It's interesting actually, and even our salary guide this year showed this, that the number one reason people are changing jobs is not for a higher salary. It's because of culture issues and a multitude, line manager, engagement within the culture, etc. Salary didn't even make it into the top three reasons. It was actually the fourth reason why
Really?
someone was changing a job, which is crazy.
Well, I guess if you're in an industry where pretty much your level is going to get this, then maybe
Yeah,
that makes
maybe you're like, okay,
sense.
I know what it is, right?
And as we talked about before, maybe it's better to get the promotion in that agency than to move. So maybe it kind of makes sense.
Yeah, it does tie third when it comes to reasons for joining the next role. So there's a difference between why someone leaves and then what the deciding factors are as to why they join, which is interesting. So it comes in third on that. Salary is a big part of every conversation. And if they're out for multiple roles, the role that's paying higher will get a look in, but it's got to tick every box still. Good culture, good brand or clients, great training and development. I have seen more of a squeeze, and we certainly didn't see an increase in salaries in this year's salary guide compared to last year. It has flatlined, and the job market has softened. So it's not all the doom and gloom that we're reading. We definitely see redundancies out there. There was another agency I got a candidate from today, which I was surprised that they were making redundancies. But actually, there's still a lot of opportunities out there, a lot. And so people will get snapped up in jobs quite easily. But because there's more of abundance of talent floating around, it's not like straight after COVID where there was pay hike, pay hike, pay hike because people literally couldn't get talent through the door. So that softened your ability to negotiate. When it comes to directors, they are actually having the toughest time, especially consumer PR directors. We're seeing a lot of those coming through have been made redundant. There's not a lot of job opportunities at that level. And I think you really need to show that to get a role more easily, need to show that you're a new business whiz, that you know how to convert leads, you've organically grown portfolios, that you have got like this list of achievements around new business for an agency to say, right, we're going to hire you. Obviously, it's different for in-house. And yes, salaries do plateau or stop, sorry, once you stop going up, once you get to a certain level. If you stay kind of at director level, you can typically expect around 90 to 100K in your small to mid-sized independent agencies. And then it might go to 120, 130 if you're in one of the big globals. And let's say you're running a £2 million Samsung account or a division of the agency. I can't say I have a lot of data touch points because when we're recruiting those roles, they tend to be few and far between where there's a lot of AD roles, but it does start to kind of flatten unless you go in-house. And then that's just about going to bigger company, bigger challenge. You might go from a 100-person business where you're the PR manager, and then you jump into somewhere like Google, and then there's, another 10 levels to climb up the ladder. And that's where I've seen, VPs of comms on 250,000.
Wow, my God. Okay, interesting. Getting giddy with figures.
Yeah.
Right. So, you knocked me off my game with those figures now. So the other question sort of on this, and I guess you can't really be completely unbiased with this, but I'm going to ask it anyway, is can people be in roles too long? So me, for instance, I've been in my particular company for 5.5 years, which I feel like typically, you think of your grandparents and stuff where they were lifers. They worked at the same factory their entire life.
Yeah.
Whereas now people jump around a lot more. And I definitely have heard people have jumped around, as much as what we've talked about is like it's a really tricky gig to go into a new agency and take the promotion as you go in. But actually people do that. They stay a little bit and then they jump around and get the next one. And actually that's how people get up a level. They do it in quick succession. Is it nowadays when you are recruiting that if someone has been at a company too long, people see that as a negative thing rather than a positive thing of these people, they're here to stay and here to grow with the company, rather than actually someone that's you've got loads of experience, you've bounced around a lot?
It depends on the role and the company or agency that you're working for. So I think most hiring managers love when they see someone's been at an agency for a chunk of time, because so many people jump at the 2 to 3 year mark. So when someone's been there 5, 6, 7 years and they've shown continued progression within that time, there's a story to the CV that says this person hasn't remained stagnant. They've obviously been a vital part of the business. They've climbed through the ranks, and therefore, to me, I'm going to consider hiring that person because they're going to join me maybe for 5, 6, 8 years, and therefore my investment in my training and development in them, etc., will get a return on investment because they're sticking with us for a long period of time. So it can definitely work in your favor. What I have seen is when an agency, I refer to agency more so that it also happens in brands as well. So I'll say this: when there's been a senior team in place for a really long time, I'm talking like it hasn't changed in 10, 15 years, and there's been no kind of fresh blood coming at that senior level, it can create a very siloed, blinkered view of the world. I'm not so sure if I'm saying that right, where this is how we do it, and it's not keeping up with the times because that senior level is only thinking of their way of doing things. But again, that depends on the agency. If an agency is constantly innovating, staying ahead with culture and their workplace culture, looking at new ways to innovate for clients, I don't think it matters, no. I have seen candidates come, they've been a director in an agency that was, just not doing, I think, interesting work. And they still got a job actually. Yeah. So in most cases, no, I don't think it impacts you. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Are there any trends that we haven't talked about that you're seeing in hiring that you think that people need to be aware of or stay ahead of? Any new trends of 2025?
I do think this AI thing that we were speaking about earlier that's bubbling up, I feel like now that it's popped up twice in 4 weeks, we're going to see a lot more of that. So testing someone's ability to use AI, I think hiring managers, when they're interviewing, want to see like, how's the industry doing it? And whenever I chat with founders and CEOs and MDs, everyone's interested, like, what's my competitor doing in this space? But when it comes to recruitment and hiring, no, it's still all about individual connection, someone's ability to really articulate their thinking and their achievements in a way that is digestible for the hiring manager. Yeah, still human to human connection.
I wanted to talk to you about the big topic, and we've sort of touched on it a little bit before, but is work working? I think that it's interesting the role that you play in. You're trying to marry up companies and people to get people jobs on the back setting of, buying a house these days is a pipe dream. A lot of people were talking about there's a birth deficit now because people can't afford to have children. Do you think that work is working for us? And where does this really lead if people are saying, look, I can't afford to work for that money?
It's a good question. And I feel like I'm starting to become one of those people that feels like they've got an old school view, right? I used to be, I'm a millennial. I remember everyone bagging on the millennials all the time. Like, they don't want to work, they don't want to do this. And now we're doing that to Gen Z or Gen Alpha or whatever's coming through right now. Look, if I look at PR and I see the progression that you can have over 6, 7 years, you can go from starting out at 26, 27K. And if you're good in 6 years, be on 50K. Maybe. I don't think that's a bad run rate, to be honest. And I don't know the challenge, because I'm not like, what I'm not up on is like the London rent for flat shares and all of those things. But I also know when I entered the industry, I was flat sharing. So I was living with 5 people. And then as I got older and my salary went up, the number of people I lived with reduced and, whatever. So I still think there's opportunities for a career run there. And if you're good, to move up that ladder relatively quickly. Not that I think even, 30K in London is easy to live on, but I think you can budget with it potentially. And I think the real challenge that we're seeing is the shift in the workplace culture, which has a lot lately been driven by Gen Z, who entered during the COVID time where hybrid working was the norm. And it shifted this culture of presenteeism to being outcomes focused. And I like that shift. But I think a lot of businesses, Latte included, went down the route of I wanted like this complete flexible freedom, like unlimited holiday, flexible working. We introduced a 4-day work week for 100% pay, but you had to be on your objectives to meet that. And what I found is it got out of hand because there wasn't enough structure and framework around it. And so from a business leader perspective, it was give an inch, take a mile. You're not meeting objectives. That's financially impacting the business. Okay, we're going to have to change something here. And I have seen businesses where it's been, let's do this for you. Let's do this for you. Let's try and they try and do everything for everyone. And actually, it really works against them. On the flip side, I've seen businesses where it's all about, come in 5 days a week, X, Y, and Z, and it's burnout culture. And that also doesn't work for the business. They can grow quite quickly, but they lose staff. So for me, the pendulum needs to average out in the middle. It sometimes swings to the employer and we need overtime. It should swing back to the employee and they've got flexibility, but it needs to land in the middle. And if that is created and this culture of outcomes focused, I do think work will be working for everyone because there'll be opportunity, good benefits, a company's making profit, et cetera, et cetera.
That's actually really interesting, that actually focusing on the outcomes is going to be what's important. Just to ask a little bit on the money then. So are there any tips? I mean, you talked a little bit there about house shares and things, but are there any instances where you maybe are recruiting people that aren't living in London? You told, well, you're going to have to be in London for the job, and they're saying that just won't cover my salary. Like, what are the tips for making that work? Is it about negotiating? Actually, I'll come in 2 days a week, but they have to be the same 2 days. I'm just going to stay with a friend overnight 1 day a week. Or is it about saying, look, you're going to have a 58-person house share?
Yeah. I think the reality probably is you need to have a 58-person house share for your first year or two, and bite the bullet a little bit on that. And that's not easy for everyone, depending on personality types and neurodiversity. We don't do a lot of intern level or entry level roles because most companies recruit that directly. So we're normally at the one step above. And I do think this creates a diversity problem in PR, because if you are coming and having to move to London on 26 grand or 27 grand, that's going to be a tough ask. So I don't really have the tips on how they do that. I think it's going to be.
Well, for me, it's more the flip side of that actually is as you're getting more senior, you are most likely getting a bit older. You are probably thinking with your partner, if you're lucky enough to have one, children, home ownership. And that's what I see in my friends is, okay, time to move out of London because for what we could afford in London, we could maybe afford to buy a shed. But actually, if you move to, a Manchester or a town no one's ever heard of in between, actually, you could get a small mansion. So that for me is like, well, what pressure is that putting on employers to be flexible and say, you know what, they want to have kids or whatever?
Yes, we are seeing a lot of that. There's so many people that have moved out of London and then they choose a business that's ideally located to an overground station in London. So it's like still a direct commute for them. Makes up a big, especially of a certain age demographic, that makes up a big portion of their decision. So even if it's central London, but it's more like East Central London, for like, let's say it's East London, Shoreditch is on the map for a lot of people. But if your train comes into Paddington, a lot of people won't consider that if they've moved out. It is something that I think if you're in a business and you've built your kudos, it's all about having a conversation. Most of the time, in my experience, is if you are pulling your weight and you've done a great job and you pack a punch and you've been in the business for a year or two and you say, hey, I now want to move out of London and I want to start a family and I need some more flexibility. What can we do here about that? You've already built your kind of reputation as a great employee, and most reasonable MDs or founders, I think, will allow that. They obviously have to balance that with the optics across the team, because if one does it, then everyone needs to have that, and that is something that needs managing. So there probably needs to be a framework built around that. Or finding an opportunity that does give that flexibility where it is only 2 days a week in the office. It's a great location in terms of where that train comes into in London. There's a few factors that you can look at that. But typically I find if you're good, you can have a conversation and negotiate.
Love that. So you talked a little bit about Gen Z there. I'm hearing a lot about Gen Alpha, who are the next ones that are going to be coming up, and almost the sort of the ones just before at the bottom of that Gen Z thing, that they're kind of saying, we don't want pay-ye jobs. Actually, we want to be digital nomads. We don't want to be, helping a boss create their dream. We want to be creating our own profit. Are you seeing a lot of that from younger generations? And how easy is that to actually happen?
something interesting that did pop up is that I think it's something like 40% of agencies now have a work from anywhere scheme. So you can work
Right.
abroad for 2 weeks or however long per year, depending on the agency scheme. We have also seen a trend, certainly AM level and below, so this would include that Gen Alpha, that are taking sabbaticals. And a lot of them are citing mental health and well-being as a reason for that. So I think there is this movement to live life and not just be stuck on climbing the career ladder. They're not adverse to doing a year or two, taking a year off, looking for that kind of flexibility. And yes, digital nomad is still absolutely a thing, but I don't think it's easy to do. We haven't seen a massive demand for freelancers this year. Freelancers are actually dropping their day rate, and freelancers would normally be the ones where they could be the digital nomad. So unless they can go out and secure some small little clients and, that maybe pay them 500, £1,000 per month and they get 3 or 4 of them, then they can work remotely. But it's certainly not working in a business as a team member that we see that there's a lot of digital nomads.
Love that. Right, well, let's just move on to some tips questions before we end. So what is your top tip to someone that is actually looking to land their dream role?
Good question. I think the first one is define what it is about the role that makes it a dream position, and be realistic. So look beyond the glitz and the glam or the favorite part and go, what's underneath the surface of that? Is there budgeting? Is it there a lot of data? For example, I always wanted to get into marketing and I didn't realize it was so data led. I only just saw the big brand advertising campaigns, but a lot of the time you're spending your head in spreadsheets. So that would be point one. Point two, have a plan of attack. This advice goes for both people trying to get into an industry or change as a professional at a certain level into a brand new industry. And my advice on that is persistency pays off. You need to have a list of 100 brands or 100 agencies that you want to work for. You need to have a cadence of about 5 points of outreach. And you need to be, if it's a creative industry, you need to be creative in your approach. So drop a LinkedIn message, follow up with an email, then do a LinkedIn voice note, comment on Twitter, make yourself visible. And I would suggest having a key achievements portfolio to say, hey, this is what I achieved. I'm not bringing experience, but this is how the way that I work, and this is what I achieved in my last role, so they can get a taste of you as an individual, because you've got to cut through the noise. It's kind of like media relations. There's a lot of stories or a lot of CVs going out. How do you make yourself stand out? Persistency, hyper-personalization, and keep it short and to the point, because founders and MDs and directors are incredibly busy. You're just another email in their inbox. Why are they going to respond to you?
Interesting. What would your advice be to someone that is sort of over their role, but they've grown really comfortable and they're feeling a bit stagnant, but they're really scared to actually leave?
I've got a friend that's an associate director at an agency that's constantly been looking to change jobs for the last 5 years, but he's very comfortable. He's built his rapport. He knows his day job, etc. And he just kept worrying, like, I think I want a new challenge, but he didn't know what that new challenge was. So I said, you need to define what it is you're looking for, because being stagnant always sounds like a negative, but actually, if you're comfortable, if you've got the trust of the MD of the business and you've got the autonomy and freedom to go and do a great job, and then that brings lots of freedom and flexibility, what is it that you're wanting to change from that? If it's a learning and development opportunity, see if you can get that within the business. And if you can't, then identify another company that will offer you. But that will then bring a whole host of challenges, because you will then be going in as a newbie, having to build your rapport all over again, build all of that trust that you've built, your personal brand in the business. So you might get all the learning and development, and then you might all of a sudden miss the flexibility and the trust and the ear of the founder that you have. So there's sometimes a payoff there. And I think my advice is the grass isn't always greener. Try and see if you can get that opportunity within first. And then if not, seek it outside and get excited by it, but also be realistic that it's gonna create a need for a whole lot of energy as well.
Love that. And then we've talked a little bit about AI and how things are changing. Is there anything that people should be doing to really future-proof their careers?
I am trying to future-proof my career and my business myself. I asked ChatGPT how to future-proof my career and my career now. But
As ChatGPT, that's pretty much the go-to thing these days.
That's what I would suggest, yeah. And it'll give you great advice, because it did the same for me.
Love that. Are there any red flags that people should be looking out for in job descriptions? Like, you're the expert. So is there anything that people should, they probably just brush over as that's just a weirdly phrased thing, but actually is quite important? Is there anything that we should be looking out for when we're looking at new roles?
Not really in a job description. I think a job description and a CV and all of those things are just templates and hooks and whatnot. The red flags are in the interview process. How you're treated, is your time respected? Are they being transparent and truthful with you? A lot of people say go with your gut feeling, and we're trying to advise against that now because your gut feeling actually is based on data. So think about what are the data touch points or data touch points, sorry, that have led you to have that gut feeling or that inclination about the opportunity. That's where you will make a clear decision. So if you're sitting on the fence and go, "Oh, there was something off about that interview and I'm unsure about the culture," think back to what those points were and then address it in the second stage. And that might be, for example, you know, you advised that I'll get to be doing creative campaigns, but then you couldn't give me any examples around that. This next interview, I would really love to get into the specifics of what percentage of my role is creative campaigns versus press office. That's just one example. Try and get the clear facts. That's my advice on that.
Sort of on that similar vein, are there questions that people should ask in an interview that they don't? Whether that's like to help them get the interviews, like thank you so much for asking that, it's shown an interest in the company, but what do you find that people forget to ask in interviews?
Yes. Everyone says you should ask a question because it shows that you're engaged. My advice is only ask a question if you genuinely are interested in knowing the answer and it hasn't already been covered, because it is way more authentic. People can tell when you're just doing the mechanics of an interview and trying to impress. What really impresses is when there's something that you're genuinely interested in. And my second point on that is don't be afraid to ask the tough questions. So many people shy away. They get a sense in the interview or something wasn't covered or they're like, oh, I don't know about that. And then they don't ask clarifying questions. And this is why so many interviews result in people making assumptions and they make the wrong assumption and don't accept the job, or the hiring manager makes the wrong assumption and they don't put an offer in for the candidate. Ask the clarifying question. Don't be afraid. The one great example is someone wants to know, is this a sweat culture type of place? And if I ask that question and I go in and say, look, I just want to know, do you have a lot of overtime at your agency? That's going to say to the hiring manager, oh, is this person a little bit precious about doing overtime? Or as if you lead into that question and say, look, I'm really interested in the work culture and the work-life balance here, but I want to set a clear understanding of what I mean by that. I know in my career that you have to sometimes work late to get campaigns sorted. There'll be sometimes 10 p.m. finishes or early starts or photo shoots. I'm totally up for all of that, but I'm coming from an environment where, to give you an example, the last 3 months I've finished at 9 p.m. every single work day, and I'm starting to get burnt out. That doesn't sound bad to an employer. They go, oh, I understand the context of where you're asking that question. So ask the tough questions, sometimes provide context so it lands in the right way.
Perfect, love that. On that question, actually, what would you say to someone that has been in that environment that is absolutely burnt out, but almost is just not even in the head? They know they need to leave because they're getting more and more burnt out, but they almost find the idea of going somewhere else and starting again almost as anxiety inducing. Like, what should people do in that situation? Should they quit and take some time out and then come back fresh? Some people might not be able to afford to do that. What would you advise?
I think that's a really tough one, because if you're burnt out and you just can't put the energy into looking for a new job, or have the energy to even start a new job on the right foot, it's a difficult place to be. But what I would say to them is, first, try and chat to your MD and say, I'm burnt out. Here's the hours that I've been doing. What can we do to fix this? And that's also going to give you a test if that MD you know, got empathy and understanding and can adapt and help you. And then the response off the back of that can then also be, right, fell on deaf ears. And then know that there are a lot of businesses out there that will give you the breathing space. So what I would suggest is, unfortunately, you're going to have to push hard to apply and go for those job opportunities, even though you're tired, and then get the job, but build a buffer in between finishing and starting. Have 2 weeks off, or if you can, push for a month off between jobs. So you know that you've got something else to go into and you can just, recharge before starting that.
Interesting. Final two questions, if I may. So, women that have had children, say they've had two children and they've been out of the workforce for 5 years overall, if they're lucky enough to do that, and they want to come back in, but obviously they've been out for 5 years. Like, what is that process usually like, and how do you guys help people with that?
Yeah, this is a really tough situation, and I've seen it happen. And it's unfair, right? Because women have to be, or well, not have to be, but are often the ones that are looking after the kids at home, and they pause their career for it.
I mean, hey, can I just say, as a dad, I would happily have taken five
Yeah.
years out if we could have afforded it.
Yes, it is really difficult because at the end of the day, when you come back, you're competing. Let's say you were an AD that left on mat leave, and then 5 years later you would have been a director. It's going to be near impossible for you to come in at director level. So let's just say you're still competing at AD level, but then you've got candidates that have been in the industry for the past 5 years. They're always going to be more competitive. So a number of things that I would suggest is, again, have a really good pitch and a creds deck ready to go, because what you want is a visual of like, what did you do? Start to refresh the memory on the campaigns and the work that you did previously before going on mat leave. Through self-awareness that you know you've been out of the industry for X amount of time, but already this is what you've been reading, this is what you're up on. Show that you're back up on the trends that are happening in the sector, so that you're showing that you've got that fresh, switched on mindset. And then it's going to be a numbers game, like a lot of recruitment is, which is chipping away at direct contacts. The challenge that you've got when you go through a recruitment agency is we are always paid by the agency or the company to shortlist on a specific skill set and time, etc. So for example, someone might be in corporate PR for the last 5 years, but they did consumer PR 5 years ago and they want to go back into consumer. We're typically not able to facilitate that move because that brand or agency is not paying us to go and find a corporate person that wants to transition back. They're paying us to find the skill set that they want. So where flexibility and opportunity comes in is when you are approaching brands directly, and don't rely on waiting for job ads. There's so many unadvertised roles. That's why a proactive, consistent follow-up. And it can't be, hey, I'm returning to the workforce. I'd love to work for your brand. It's very generic. Go in and pack a punch. Hey, I'm returning to the workforce. Here are 3 killer things that you need to know about me and what I bring to the table. And this is why I want to work for you. It needs to be that style of approach. Knock on 100 doors, and I'm sure you'll get some coffee conversations booked in. And what I would also say is I think there's like D, C, B, and A grade brands and agencies. So don't go for the A grade agencies straight off the bat. Maybe start down in C, where there's not as sexy brands. They're not doing the best work. Maybe they don't have the most high profile reputation. That agency or brand struggles to attract talent. So you come in with your CV with a punch of like, hey, I'm back, I'm ready to work hard. You've got a better opportunity getting in there. It's a stepping stone role that you do it for a year, and then you might jump to the B next year, and then you jump to the A, and then everything's back on track.
Perfect. So let's wrap this up. Final questions. What would be your top tip for finding the right recruitment agency? And you can't just say yeah.
Yeah, Latte. Head to wearelatte.com. I think you won't know until you reach out to the agency. So ask your colleagues and friends. Everyone has had good and bad experiences, so they will be able to tell you where to go. And on the first call, assess how consultative were they. Did they know the job in and out? Did they give me the pros and the cons, or were they pushing me to say, yes, I want my CV accepted? There should be a process of where you feel really comfortable to ask questions, and it should just be a sell. It should be the whole deal, because everywhere has good and bad points, and you want to know what they are so it's right for you. You'll be able to tell on that first call if that's a recruiter that you want to work with. The other challenge is that every agency will have exclusive roles. So 70% of the jobs that we recruit are exclusive to Latte, which means you won't get that job at another recruiter. And I'm sure they also have some exclusive jobs that you won't get at Latte. So for example, we don't touch any of the big globals because we've signed the Clean Creative Pledge. So you still might need to chat to other recruitment agencies. And unfortunately, put up with some bad eggs as long as they get you in front of the right agency or the right brand.
Perfect. Thank you. And if people want to work with Latte, what's the website?
Wearelatte.com.
Dean, thank you so much.
Thank you, Lewis. It has been a pleasure.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.